Welcome back. Today's video is going to cover repositioning and remounting the battery placement, as well as running the new fuel line and making a new hose with a sample of that, and possible surprise near the end. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to be doing a nutsert in this hole right here. So I had to pull this front headlight assembly back because I gotta cut a half moon. I gotta cut some of this out of here, so I got to grab the nutsert on this and not cock this because I'm moving the battery tray forward about basically 1 inch. Alright, with any luck I'll be able to pry this piece out without hurting the rest of the bracket, which is actually for the horns. And I'll put a bolt back in there because it's not going to really matter. All I want is room for my nutsert to expand. And that should do it. Cool. Alright, I got a good bite, so I'm going to put another hole, down, spaced out where the battery bracket was, or the battery tray, so I have a hole here and here, so I'll drill another hole and put another nutsert in. Alright, I just got done putting in 2 more nutserts down on the bottom rail. I have the 2 that were up here. I relocated the battery an inch forward, which is going to give me enough room to mount the power steering bracket, or excuse me, the reservoir. So this is going to sit pretty much right there, and then the reservoir is going to sit right here. So I should have ample room. I'm gonna bolt this and make a bracket, and I'm gonna bolt it to the inner fender, so it'll be a support off of this bottom post right there. I can't use my hand because but off of this one here, it's gonna go down to the rail here as a support up on this, and then the other 2 I will fabricate to mount to the fender here, and maybe over to this side here, somewhere in here, but it'll have a 3-point secure, and that'll sit there, and that'll give me the room I need. And that's using the full-size battery, and that's not even downsizing the battery yet. So once I have a shorter battery, the reservoir will stay, but it'll just clear up this side of the battery, give me a little bit more room over here. So I think everything's going to work out. You should be able to see the top starter bolt and the one that's just above the solenoid. So those 2 are in. And also right through there is the lower starter bolt. So they are all in. But to get that in, you literally have to raise the engine about a ½ an inch. So loosen both motor mouth nuts, raise the engine about a ½ an inch, and you actually have to snake it so to install the starter. You have to kind of come through the suspension here and dive it in and get it kind of cocked in here. There's not enough room to clear this number 2 tube, so you have to raise the engine enough to clear your K-member, and you can kind of get it in there and then clock it. Once it's in there, but it is un booger. And here's another shot of the upper starter bolt. I have all 3 of them in. I like to put all 3 of them in, and that's the way I'm going to keep it. So now it's just routing cable and wrapping the starter lead. Once I get this figured out how I'm going to go, I'll wrap that in some heat foil and then run it along the bottom of the block, but that's still to come. All right, this is the starter. Cables wrapped with heat shield. It's routed in there, kind of behind. You can barely see it in there. I'm gonna sneak underneath. So the cable comes along through here, through this bracket. So it's hard plastic here underneath, and it's spaced off the bottom of the pan, goes around the filter. This is loose right now because I'm going to tie it back to that stud right there. And once I get the reservoir in for the power steering, and then they both go up there, and the ground is over here on the motor mount. I got two grounds, one to the battery, and then the other one's going to go to the chassis. And this is my battery positive cable, which comes off of down here. And this is a short lead over here to the alternator right here. So I routed the battery cable and everything else behind the radiator support brackets along the trough here. And then it swings around and goes behind the battery. This is the stock battery cable. I moved the battery forward 1 inch. My power steering bracket and reservoir go right here, and it can be removed in and out with or without the battery, as you can see. This is the stock battery cable, stock box. The ground plugs are here. This is the starter button, or starter pigtail. That's stock, and it's just looped here. Starter cable goes all the way down underneath to the starter. And up on top, everything's kind of routed, pressure regulator, etc. So this is pretty much done. Today, I made another change in plans, which is not unexpected in what I'm doing here, especially for the first time, but I don't have enough room for the Corvette C5 filter with the return regulator built in with fittings on because of exhaust, and my panhead ball is set up in the back. So I'm going to run a regulator in the engine compartment. I'm going to run a new fuel line. So I just pulled the vapor line out because none of that stuff's needed, and snaked that out of the chassis, and the fuel tank is out. So this is the fuel tank. I have to put a return port in here, so I'll be taking the hat off to see what kind of access I have. And then all of these vapor lines will be coming off. I will leave the T here, and I will put a vent line to a canister for charcoal, just for fuel. But all of this stuff will come off. I'm going to save all this just in case somebody ever needs this stuff. And the vapor line is what's laying there on the floor. Snaking that out with a Maximum Motorsport full frame setup is kind of tough. And just so you ever experience this, you take all the brackets loose here, kind of snake it out, and then you can kind of force it gently without disrupting any of the rear end back here. Pull it down, and then just kind of snake it out through here, twisting and turning. Make sure you have adequate, clearance up and down. You could do it on a jack. So, but my goal now is to make a new line here, return, and I'll bend it to kind of conform along this way, come through here, and then I'll get it all secured back up, and it'll be up in the wheel well area where this one comes up, and we'll tie into the fuel system. So that's what my project is. This morning I'm going to start fabricating my return steel line that's going to go under the chassis along the stock fuel line. So to make things a lot easier for myself, this was a puzzle, just like getting the vent tube out. I pulled the entire fuel line out, and now I have it laying on the floor. There's not a lot of bends in here, as far as what I had to do to tweak it, but I will be able to, starting at this end, make a snake. I know what I'm going to do at that end. and kind of follow this contour a little bit. Maybe not as radical as all these little bends. And then I'll shove this one back in, and then I'll feed the other one back in the chassis. But again, getting this out is like going up through here, pulling it out through there, along here, and just kind of just doing a whole big snake twist thing, and it'll come out. Patience. Okay, this was a little bit of a challenge, but I did it. The foreground one in the front is the factory. The one in the back is the one that I bent. And I started back here because I know how I'm going to terminate this and put a ferrule on that end, compression sleeve, but it's all bent. As you can kind of see, it's close enough to where I know that I can get it in and get everything fit, snake it through, and make my connections, and then I'm going to clamp these together. So with a little bit of patience and the original as my guide and my trusty tubing bender, I got it done. All right, this is one of the rivets that I drilled out, which was supporting or securing the fuel strap and brake lines. I'm going to use that, but I'm going to put a nutsert in here so I can remove this if I need to and make adjustments. There's two of them. There's one here and there's one in the front. I already did the one in the front, so I've already drilled this out. So basically I'm going to put my nutsert tool in here, and I'm using a 1024. So now I'll be able to put a screw in and remove this if necessary. I'll have it locked with a lock washer and flat washer to cover the space right here. That'll secure that up. And then I'm using a piece of 5/16 hose, a little bit wider than this bracket, and that gets split, and then I put it around this tube and I put it in there, and it holds this nice and secure. When I get done, I did the ones underneath already. It fits like a glove. So I'm going to get this side done all the way up to the front. I've got another one that's done up here. I'll get these secured, and I got to rebend this a little bit as I'm going. So we'll see a finished product later. All right, I've marked my hat where I'm going to make a hole for my AN bulkhead fitting. So now I got to get the pump out of here. So now I'll disassemble this and exchange the pump. I've got the pump body housing loose, pulled the fuel pump out. So instructions are to reuse. I'm going to clean this, probably clean the bottom of this a little bit, and this gets reused. This filter gets reused. I'm going to slap the other one in. Well, gently put it in. So this will go down inside, and then just kind of hook everything back up. The small screws are 5mm or 4.5 hex. Once you get them loose, you can thread them out by hand. They're not heavy, or hard rather, excuse me. And then this filter will replace this one here on the external side. So I'm going to get busy and do that. It's just tedious work. We'll lube this before we shove this back in, and then just tighten everything back in, and then I'll come back and install it. Okay, putting the fuel filter back together, basically took the old pump, put the fuel pump back together. This is the old screen that you reuse, so this is on, and then this is actually over this whole thing. So this has to go on first, and then just kind of lift up on the back side of this, and then put a little screwdriver or something to pry on and just kind of tip this up a little bit, and then this will come off. So putting it back on is not too complicated. So I just take a little bit of the lube that they give you with the filter, and I put it around the outside edge of this just to make it a little bit easier. Then we're going to put this on so that the sock, so pre-screen, is going to go on the pump here like this, and then we just kind of just pop it down on there. And it's just a push fit, so there's no screws or anything like that holding it, so it's just on there like that. And then this pump will go back in the tank, or this canister here. There we have it. So now it just goes back in the tank. Alright, I've got a pilot hole. I marked where the bulkhead fitting is going to go, or I'm going to put it. At least I'm going to attempt to put it. And I've got a pilot hole. I used like a 16th inch bit. Now I'm going to up to 1/8 inch. And then I'm going to use a step drill, and I'm going to go out just big enough to get this threads, just past the threads here, which is just about 9/16 of an inch. So I'm going to start at 9/16. I'll get out to 9/16 or thereabouts, and just enough to get this in. Even if I thread this in just a tiny bit, I'll feel good with the seal on our ring on each side seal. So we'll get started. I'll keep going here. And I'm marking the 9/16 ring, so I know when I get to there, that's where I stop. I'm just being careful that I don't hit the hose on the other side. That would be bad. Perfect. And there we go. And then I have plenty of room on the underside for my bulkhead nut, so I'm good here. I'm going to use some of this sealant that's used at service stations for vapor lines and gasoline. So I'm just putting a little bit on the outside, or actually it'll be the inside edge of the seal that's going to go in from the outside. So I'll put it on the fitting, and then I'm going to put that one in, and I'm also going to put some on the inner, and then I'm also going to Loctite, or actually I'm going to put some thread locker on the threads of the AN fitting on the bulkhead, just to be safe. And then we'll tighten everything up. And then I'll figure out what fitting I'm going to be using. the outside. Alright, so that'll set up. This will go back in the tank. And then I'm either going to have a straight fitting, which I'm not really too keen on as far as I don't think I have that kind of room, or I will go out and purchase a 45, which I think is going to be a little bit better fit to clear my trunk. And of course I'm going to have that area raised and make a new top, I think, in there anyway. So, but this will be on here, and you know, put it back on the tank and then do a test fit. Right now I'm going to take this whole thing and shove it back down in here. Again, the sock goes through a little slot inside the tank here. There's two little clip tabs that go either side. So this is basically going to get fished in with the float level first, and then we can get our sock down. Now let's okay, and then it's just tighten it up. Alright, I had to do some cutting and stitch welding here to fit my pressure regulator. So I went ahead and stitched it first, marked out where I was going to cut, then cut it out. And I will temporarily place the regulator where it's going to go. So it's going to sit right there, and I'll be able to access it, and I'll cut a hole in the plastic. I keep my plastic front trim there. So anyway, I'm pretty happy with that. I got plenty of clearance side to side and up and down, so I'll get it set in. Alright, this is the regulator that's been mocked up and is now permanently mounted. I've just made my first fuel line just to get an idea on what's going on. There it's just loose, but this is secured. What I ended up doing was cutting out the pinch weld, tack welded both sides just for reinforcement, and recessed this. And I've also recessed my cover that goes down here in this area to clear the back of this. I can still adjust it. Pressure regulator is going to clear, and when I put the top piece on here, I will cut out for that so I can see it. This is just temporarily on here. I'm just kind of just mocking everything up, but for the most part that's done. And then coming over to this side, I will be shaping. This is the return line right here, and I have enough to, like, I can reshape this. I'll have to tire off, but pretty much it'll sit up, and then I'll kind of just bend it in here along here. I got stuff to cut off at the top because I left it long. I'll put the adapter on this one down here, and then run a hose over to the regulator. It's just going to be really busy. This is one busy engine compartment for sure. So I'm getting real close. I'm looking to start it up here, test fire within the next few days. So we'll see how that goes. tank return line. That'll be on the tank. This will come out, go up to my return. So kind of like something like this. So we're gonna go test fit. Okay, this morning I'm gonna start by just kind of doing an overall quick view of the fuel lines. The fuel lines are made, so I'm going to start at the back. The tank is out, but I'll start at the back and kind of walk along the underside of the chassis and just show you that I basically pulled out the vapor line and made a new steel return line. So I'm going to start over here at the tank, then I'm going to go to the back, and then we'll get under the car and kind of follow that up all the way to the engine compartment. So at the tank, I'm using the stock feed. So the stock feed is going to be here, and then I drilled, instead of coming in the side with a 90, I put a straight bulkhead. This is 6AN, this is a 45, and this is about 10.5 inches of hose. And basically this is going to come out and actually goes into my feed, as you'll see underneath. So this sits behind the filter will go up here. Everything's kind of out of the way. I think this goes this way, and then this will be over here on the chassis. So we'll sneak back here real quick. So the fuel filter, the feed is still right here, and this is my return, and it kind of goes up, snakes up underneath. Let's see if I can get underneath here. Snakes up underneath the bracket, and then ties back into the chassis bracket, and then I bent line. This was a bugger. I didn't do this in the chassis, trust me. Okay, following the fuel rail, you can kind of see I tied into the chassis bracket, and then it just kind of follows along here and then snakes underneath. And this was the bugger part, getting underneath the full frame stiffener, and then again along the outside. I don't know how well this is showing up, but and then on this side, coming up, this is where the vapor line was, and then venting and following everything and going back up into the engine compartment through this hole here, and then I'll get up on the, actually I'm going to drop the car down, and then we'll cover the top, but try to mimic the chassis as much as I could to keep things out of the way, and they're secure, they're in there good. Okay, then coming up into the engine compartment, this is the stock feed line with the quick disconnect for the EFI fitting, a 90 hose, and it runs and comes out on the top here, and then the feed comes around, ties into the fuel rail. Regulator got positioned back in here, and the return is underneath on a 90 behind the hose, routes this way, and then back down into the line that I made. So they're both in here. There's enough flex here. And as far as the regulator goes, I basically had to do some stitch welding back here on the body, and then did a little like horseshoe cutout for the regulator, and as you can see I got good clearance, and then mounted it to the firewall, and it's secure. And actually when I put this cover on, I'll end up cutting a hole, and so the gauge will stick through when I get to that point. Welcome back. I'm darn near close to doing a test fire right now. I'm just gonna go over a few things. So this morning I said, well, I'll come out and I'm gonna put fuel in, I'm gonna hit my key because I know the pump works, and check for fuel leaks. Well, lo and behold, I was getting 0 fuel pressure, but I heard the pump run. So checked everything again, and lo and behold, my trusty 2002 Ford manual wiring diagram, checking the pins and the plugs, and this is how I wired it. It wants the fuel pump negative to be brown and pink, and the positive was red and black. Well, after a half an hour of figuring things out and just doing my normal troubleshooting, The only thing I could think of was the pumps running backwards, and that's exactly what it was doing. So I spent the next 20 minutes just changing the 2 wires on my relay and ground in the back that on the plug that I made, and hit the key, heard the pump run. Or actually, I did a test fire from the back there just using the hot pump, and it pressurized the system. So then I just checked for leaks, which I had one small one because I didn't tighten my return line in the back quite enough. That's been taken care of. I have the pressure set to 58 psi. I'm getting ready to test fire it, but before I do, I'm going to do my mass air meter set up over here. So I just cut my tube, and I'll be putting that on, and then I'm going to come out and I'm just going to do a test fire, and I'm going to see what this thing does. So I'm going to go take a break right now, and then when I come back, you know, things happen. They happen to me. It's not the first time. I love troubleshooting. So this was kind of a fun experience and just more of a headache than anything else. But I did check the pump pamphlet and paperwork that came with it, and it didn't say anything about plus minus. So I couldn't really go by that. I was just going by the Ford wiring. So if you ever run into that where you have pump pressure, it might be running the wrong way. So hope this helps somebody, and I'll be back. Okay, I just got back from having a short break, so we're going to see if it starts.